This is Wendy Halley, and you're listening to Lucid Cafe. Hi there, thanks for hanging out with me at the Lucid Cafe. In today's episode, I speak with Thomas Attig, an applied philosopher and revolutionary voice in grief studies. His new collection, Seeking Wisdom in Death's Shadows, collected writings on how we grieve, distills a lifetime of listening, reflection, and teaching into understanding and guidance for mourners, caregivers, and counselors. We covered a lot of ground in our conversation, including some esoteric territory I couldn't resist exploring with my new friend Tom, who has quite a large brain. It was fun. To give you an idea of just how large Tom's brain is, he holds bachelor and doctoral degrees from Northwestern University and Washington University in St. Louis. At Bowling Green State University, while chair, he and his colleagues established the world's first PhD program in applied philosophy. A fellow of the International Workgroup on Death, Dying, and Bereavement, he has received a Lifetime Achievement Award for Death Education from the International Network on Personal Meaning, Death Educator and Lifetime Achievement Awards from the Association for Death Education and Counseling, and the Robert Fulton Founders Award from the Center for Death Education and Bioethics at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. See? Large brain. So please enjoy my conversation with Thomas Attig. Tom, thank you very much for joining me.
It's good to be here.
All right, sir. So I would like to I would like to learn a little bit about you. I know you're a philosopher, and I saw that you are an applied philosopher. Can you please describe what that means?
Okay, I'll try to do that. My colleagues and I established at Bowling Green State University in 1987 the world's first PhD in applied philosophy. And what we had in mind was gathering together people who are interested in teaching things like medical ethics, business ethics, legal ethics. What were some of the others? Well, death and dying came in there. Political philosophy, moral philosophy, spread out over whole ranges of topics. And my shorthand way of kind of thinking of what we were doing was acknowledging that there are different ways of thinking about things, and dominant ones at the time and still have to do with working with the sciences, where you're trying to figure out, maybe even calculate about and count matters in the world, where you do quantitative scientific analysis of all kinds of things. But there are lots of challenges in life that are not susceptible to counting up and coming up with a solution. In my book, I talk about philosophy as, in the traditional sense, the search for wisdom. In circumstances where there are no definitive answers, but you need good thinking to get you through addressing challenges that I would call mysteries, you need the skills of a philosopher. What do I mean by mysteries? Life itself is a mystery. Death is surely a mystery. Suffering is a mystery. Love is a mystery. Our souls and the depths of our being are mysteries to us, and your soul and spirit are mysteries to me. And if I'm going to be your friend, I have to learn a bit more about them, and so on. But problems can be managed, solved, overcome, surmounted, controlled. Mysteries cannot be changed. they are what they are. Let's just take four. Um, change. You can ask these questions about living a human life. Is change okay? Is an impermanence okay? Is being small and insignificant okay? Is uncertainty okay? Um, take those. You cannot change them. You have to accommodate to them. And just when you think you've come to terms with impermanence, something turns out to be impermanent that you didn't suspect was impermanent. And you've got to come to terms with that, but the impermanence doesn't change. It just shows you a new face. And that's what death does, and that's what grief does, and that's what loss does, and that's what suffering does. And that's why being philosophical about death and dying has you almost constantly engaging with how am I going to live with this thing that won't go away? I thought I had a good understanding of it, but now, whoops, boy, this look different. How am I going to live with this as opposed to how am I going to control this or take
Hmm.
possession of this and so on? A quite different kind of question. And applied philosophy, I think, in most every area where it's happening, has to do with engaging with constants in the human condition that well, our fellow human beings are mysterious, aren't they? And we don't have the privilege of controlling them. And if we wouldn't want to control them, but we want to learn how to live with them. Philosophers have more to say about that than biologists.
Right. Very different fields. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds extremely broad. And so are you saying then that it's kind of like by applied, do you mean we're trying to understand the mysteries in order to live a
I
better
think
life or
I think
are
what we're almost constantly engaged in that we don't talk enough about is learning how to live with various aspects of the world around us and of ourselves.
mm,
My view of grieving is, and this is the originality with which I am credited, I think. Uh, I'll tell you a story. I started teaching the course on death and dying. And I realized that my students, um, who were nurses and gerontologists and social workers and so on, um, weren't going to be engaging too much with ethical dilemmas. Should we do this or not from a moral point of view? They were going to be concerned about, am I going to be all right in a room alone with somebody who's dying? Uh, am I going to be able to talk to a family and explain to them what's happening that is likely to lead to this person's dying and some of the challenges in daily life and the long term in your life are going to be kind of new and fresh for you if no one close to you has died and so on. My students were going to be frightened to go into a room with a dying person or with a grieving family. How can I teach them about that? Well, I had to learn a lot myself.
mm,
All right, so I joined professional organizations, and nurses and social workers and so on would tell me about what they were encountering, and I would ask people about what was happening in their families. And um, eventually, I asked my students uh, to fill out journals through the term. And one of the self-exploration exercises I gave with them asked them to talk about their three most significant losses in their lives. They're typically 20 to 22 years old, so there may have been deaths, there may not, but there were losses um, that they could talk about. And I found that none of them talked about five stages of grieving. It just wasn't what their experiences were about at
right.
all. What they talked about was what to do with or how to live with the physical world that they're witnessing, and they're witnessing deterioration of a person, or the death has taken place, what do we do with the stuff left in the closets? Uh,
Mm.
how can I sit in the same place in church where mom used to sit right next to me? Relearning their physical surroundings, walking familiar sidewalks, going into familiar stores and other places in town.
With all
Uh,
those reminders, yeah.
all the reminders there, all the reminders in engagements with other persons. They had to relearn their social surroundings. What's it going to be like to be with grandma, given that she just lost her son? And I lost my father. It's not the same to lose a father as what she's going through losing her son. I I really want to tell her that I'm concerned about her and love her, but I don't know how to do that. And if a counselor was there, the counselor would say, "Tell her those things." All right, but they don't know that. So relearning your physical surroundings, relearning yourself. Do I really care about? Well, C.S. Lewis wrote about this in his book. My wife died. Why should I shave?
Hmm.
What's the point of a smooth cheek? um,
It's a great
and
question, actually.
yeah, and then we struggle with our place in the greater scheme of things. We thought the world on the grand scale works this way, and it shovels this at our feet instead. Um, I've been taught this about Jesus speaking English, uh, and it turns out that that's a translation. Wow,
Yeah.
this kind of blows your mind.
Referencing before we started recording, yes.
Yes, yes, that's true. Uh,
He told me a
um,
joke about,
but we have to relearn how to be and live in our physical surroundings, our social surroundings, within our own skins. The things that matter to me because mom approved of what I was doing or encouraged me to do them, do I still care? Or was I only doing them to satisfy her and so on? And then there's uh, I was a pretty staunch believer in X, but this sure calls it into question. Um, what do I really think? What do I really believe? So relearning the world is a rather comprehensive thing, but that's what people are challenged to do.
and it seems like as you're talking, I'm thinking about how sad it is that we have to relearn, maybe because in our culture we don't have a relationship with death. And so we have maybe what you're talking about is like an intellectual idea of it. And then
And
when the
here it is.
reality, yeah,
Yeah,
the reality of it hits, the actual experience of a loss,
yeah.
it's a much different ball game, right? And it's like you can't think your way through that with concepts or ideas. It's more, well, how do I just get through
How do I get through
the
the day?
day?
How am I going to
Yeah.
be with this house? Do I want to live here anymore?
Yeah, yeah.
Am I going to go into my child's room? And there's just so much, and I'm not ready for that. Or I'm not ready to sort out this stuff and give some
Hmm.
of it away and hold on to some of it for dear life, and so on. And you have to kind of sort out what you're ready for and what you're not. Start small, get bigger.
Yeah. So it's this abstraction that's there until it's not, until it's in your face and
Oh
you're
yeah.
you're experiencing it. And so that's what it seems like you've dedicated your professional life to exploring the study of grief
Absolutely.
and loss.
It never comes down to these five things or these four tasks or whatever. It's as comprehensive as learning how to live. But there's a bonus in all of this. Have you had any experience in learning how to live? You've
I would,
spent your whole life
yeah,
learning
I
how
would
to
say,
live,
yeah, maybe
right?
maybe a few years.
Well, yeah, me too. I'm past my teens now, and this older age is interesting, but I think there's comfort in a simple message that looks like kind of a slap in the face. How do we do this? We do it the same way we've been learning how to live our whole lives. We've got a lot of experiences in dealing with change, in dealing with growth, in dealing with challenge, in dealing with disappointment, in dealing with heartache, in dealing with all kinds of things. And we've got some inherent abilities that we've developed, and we have an ability, and we know it well by now, to adapt new ways of doing things. We've often had to change and sometimes radically. So I ask my students or audiences and so on, how many of you, when you think about learning how to live, how many of you think you've finished? Could you raise your hand? No one
I've
ever
yeah, I've
raises
nailed
their
it.
hand.
I've figured it all out.
Oh, yeah.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm not saying
And people
I'm
look
being a
at them
smart
like,
ass. Yeah.
are you kidding? Well, maybe not. So what would be a reasonable expectation about how long it takes to relearn the world, relearn how to live in the world after someone who's close to you has died? A couple of weeks, maybe a month, maybe 6 months, a year. No, the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And you're going to do two things um, that can be weighty and so on, but are inevitable. Um, you are going to miss them as long as you live, and you're going to continue loving them as long as you live. The first is hard, the second redeems the first.
Hmm.
Or the more you can spend time on holding on to the gifts they've given you that no one can take from you, uh, they can take the box on the desktop, or that might break, or the car could break down, or all kinds of ephemeral things and physical things you may lose. Um, if they painted something upstairs on a wall, and across the room here, we have paintings painted by my wife's best friend who died in 2012.
Mm.
Right here, I have a mosaic made by my best friend who happened to die that same year. We have physical legacies, but we also have parts of ourselves that are different because we lived with and knew and loved and were loved by this person who died. If your mother made you tough and courageous, uh, no one took that away when mom died. You still have that. When you get to the holiday season, where we are now, there is typically experience of people feeling not very well connected with their surroundings because there's all this joy and laughter, and they're feeling terrible because just 2 weeks ago, their brother died or their best friend died or something like that. And I've spoken to audiences, they resist the idea, but I think it's really true. And over the years, you can get better at it. Work into the holiday season some discussion with your family, if a family member has died, about the best thing he ever taught me, the most beautiful thing we ever saw together.
Hmm. It's a
The,
way of bringing them into
Well,
the
bring them in, acknowledging that alongside of the sorrow that seems to grip you and make it impossible to enjoy the holidays, you haven't lost. Let's think of it this way. Is it possible to love someone in separation? All right, that's what you have to do when they've died.
right.
Have you got all of your friends and relatives with you in the room right now? I don't have them in here with me.
No, no, no. It's
Do you think they stopped loving you when you left? Did you stop loving them when you left? We love most of the people that we love most of the time in our lives when they're not even in the room. How do we do that? We talk about them, we remember them, we laugh at things that come to mind, we do things the way they taught us to do them. We've got practical legacies, we've got ways of caring about others that we've learned from people, ways of the soul, ways
right.
of caring, loving, making ourselves at home, making a home for ourselves. And in lots of ways, we've got legacies that they've taught us about how to do those things and influences. But they're still there, they're still in us. And we've got ways of spirit that are still in us because they
So,
gave them to us.
right. I think with somebody who's going through, especially a new loss,
Mhm.
would say is that my loved ones who are still alive but not physically with me, I know that I'm going to see them again.
Uh-huh.
physically, but the
Yeah.
person who's died, they're
I'm
not
not gonna,
just down the street, or they're not just in another building
yeah.
or another city or
But was that being with them physically the best thing about knowing them?
right. But I think in the
It's up
throes of
it's up
grief,
very high on the list, but
yeah.
there are a lot of other things pretty high on the list. Um,
No, understood. Yeah, I was just trying to put myself in the place of someone who's in the throes of really deep
oh yeah,
grief.
well, I
Yeah.
mean,
But I think
what you
those are
want to
good.
do is hold this out as a promise of something you can get to. And the world wants to be quiet about the person who's died because they're afraid they're bringing them up is going to hurt you.
Yeah, or say
So
the wrong
then you're
thing, or
meeting
yeah.
a world that's full of silence. And if I've just experienced the death of someone very close to me, and I sense that people are not wanting to approach me because they're afraid of what to say and so
Mm,
on. I think I might tell them a story of a couple that used to come to my classes, who eventually founded a little group, a support group, mutual support group for bereaved parents. Uh, she said that when her daughter died, over a weekend, she was 3 years old, the world didn't know what to say to her, so they said nothing.
ah,
And the priest at the church said, "Congratulations." What do you mean by that? Well, you now have an angel in heaven. That is not the message she wanted to hear. She said,
congratulations.
the
Okay, yeah.
thing that was most effective was a neighbor lady. They sort of gotten to know each other over the fence and so on, but didn't know each other well. But their kids played together. And the woman called her and said, "You know, our daughters played together. I know your daughter died this last weekend," and so on. Over the years, I've taken quite a few photographs of the two kids playing. How'd you like to come over for coffee and we'll look at the photos together?
Beautiful.
That was the best thing anybody did.
Yeah.
Um, they're still part of your life. Don't pretend they aren't. And try to connect with the good. And the bad will still hurt, but it will reduce in its capacity to really grip you the more you find yourself connecting with what you still hold. That is among the most precious stuff that you've ever had. I'm trying to think, there was another thought that came into my head. It'll come back.
Okay.
It's kind of a mental floater.
I get that more than you know. So,
Oh, this is it. This is my point. Uh, Sort of put in another way. I have met people who almost fall in love with the pain that they feel after
yeah,
someone who has died because this is the only way to hold on to them,
that connection.
or
Yeah.
this is a way of my sadness is a deep expression of my continuing love. That's the kind of thing they'll say about it. And I think people do get themselves caught up with their pain, like it's the only thing they can possibly hold on to. And that's a dark place to stay out of love.
Yeah, it
Uh,
is.
and I think that beneath the desire to hold them in sorrow because it seems like the only way to do it, there's a deeper desire, which is a desire to continue loving them. I remember sitting in an audience, a fellow professional whose son had died, and I knew he had died within the last couple of years. And I got to a point where in my talk I was making this point about, I think beneath that desire that is expressed in the continuing continuing to be very sorrowful, there's a more fundamental desire, and that's a desire to continue loving. And he went, "I got
Okay.
it." And he needed to hear that.
Right. I mean, I think you're pointing out a really important thing, and that is that emotions are not rational. And so when you get into that place, I'm a mental health clinician, and I've certainly talked with lots of people in deep grief over the years. And the folks who get really attached to their pain, from my understanding, is they're afraid if they let go of that pain, that
They completely let go.
they're dishonoring the memory of their loved one,
Yes,
or that they don't deserve to be happy, that they should stay in suffering because it would be dishonoring the memory of that person.
yes, and I think that's a deep hole to dig for yourself, and a lot of people do it. And
Yeah.
uh,
But again, it's not rational.
I think it's what you're doing with the thought or the emotion that's not so rational. I think let me talk about emotions just for for a moment.
Sure.
I think that another kind of theme that runs through our surrounding culture is that to to handle or come to terms with emotions, what the emotions want is expression. They want to be expressed. And if you can do a really good job of expressing your emotions, you're doing justice to them, and that's the best thing you can do. And I think that emotions are not crying for expression. I think they're crying for understanding.
Mm. They
They
have a story to tell. Yeah.
they want attention, yes, and they have a story to tell. And when you listen to them, you can learn about the deep needs of your ego, for example, to control something, to get something done, to be the master of living the everyday life that you're living and be a good problem solver, and so on. And egos have a tendency to inflate their significance and overestimate their powers. Uh,
Really? You think
so
so?
that, so they come into real disappointments when they hit something like mysteries that they can't control.
Very
So,
true.
so grieving is a very humbling experience for egos. And if they can learn that, gee, I really am vulnerable. I didn't think I was. There are things I really can't control. I'm not the master of my fate. And so those are hard lessons, but you will swallow them if you experience death a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, but our souls, uh, emotions of loneliness, for example, are communicating to you that you have a need to be with other people
To connect. Yeah.
and to connect and to be grounded in relationships with others. We're profoundly social beings. We need other social beings to love, have fun with, take care of, be cared for by, to um, make lives in families and homes and communities where we share interests and pursue them together and feel the rewards of being soulful, the rewards of being loved and cared about, as well as uh, loving and caring others. We need that. And the heartaches in the soul are crying for you can't have the warmth and the love, or warmth and love in the family of relationships that you've had with this person, but you need the other people who love you and who you love in your world. Lots of grieving people, I think, sort of focus on the relationship with the person who has died as if it's the only relationship in their lives. And now they've lost that, and they don't have time for their children, and they don't have time for their brothers and sisters or their mothers and fathers, and so on. And it was never that way when this person was alive. What percentage of your time was actually spent with this person who died? A lot smaller than 100%, probably smaller than 10%. But it was a
Mm.
very important 10%. Don't lose track of that. But you would think that you had led a very distorted life if you look back and one person had 75% of your time, and your children and your friends and your colleagues and the people that you remember, and so on, had that only little bits of that other 25%. No one ever lives that way, or rarely.
Sure. Yeah, it makes me wonder what that person, the shrink in me wants to know,
Why this one?
well, how is that longing serving them?
Hmm.
What is that doing for them? Because in their minds and their hearts, it's doing something. There's a reason why they're kind of dedicating themselves to the memory of that person and putting them in this special place where everyone else disappears.
I have stories coming back to me. A woman I met, oh, 35 years ago, I given a talk at an international congress somewhere, and a woman came up to me. She was an Israeli, and she wanted to tell me about the death of her son and what she had done in the aftermath. And he was a dear son, but he had gone to live on a kibbutz, and she was living, I think she was like from Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, so a major city in Israel. And she would go and visit her son now and again, and she got acquainted with some of his friends out on the kibbutz and people he was living with. And he died. And a part of her experience was longing to know more about her son's life in that kibbutz. He'd been away from home for like 5 or 6 years. And she found the people friendly there, so she decided that she would make several trips and try to connect with people who thought of themselves and he mentioned as friends of his. And just, what was everyday life like with him? What was he interested in? What really made him laugh? What made him cry? What was he devoting himself to? And so on. She knew quite a bit, but she'd like to meet up with the people who were sharing his days to learn more. And she brought a journal or two with her, and she was filling the journal with pages about her son. And she really treasured those journals. And she had an idea of how long she was going to go out there, and then she would have interviewed the people she wanted to interview, and really had a good sense of her son. And people were beginning to say, it's like he's the only person in your life. And she says, he's not the only person. He's a valued person. He's a precious person. I wanted to know what I could about him. And I really felt good in the company of people who loved him the same way I loved him. Uh, but I've made my last trip. I've got these journals. I can turn to them when I want to. I'm not reading them all day, every day. In fact, there are many days now that I don't even pay any attention to them at all. And I think I've got a balanced perspective on sort of where he fits in my life. And if I need some comfort or if I need a special dose of humor or whatever that I can only find in him, I know where to look. And these things help me remember him. But I, I'm not distorting my life around the death of my son. I've got other children. I'm giving them as much attention as I ever did. I've got friends. I'm spending time with them again. I've returned to a reasonable balance in my life. And there's a difference between what she was doing, which is really touching and more than a lot of people do, but it wasn't distorting. It wasn't taking over her life.
Right.
It wasn't my devotion to my son is the only important thing about me. I've got work to do. I've got other family members to attend to. I've got friends. I've been away a bit more than I was before he died, but
I'm back.
I'm going back to the
Yeah.
fuller life, and I'm bringing a full understanding of him with me, and I'll never forget him, but I won't focus on him all day, every day of my life. That's just not what I ever did. Why should I do that now?
Okay. That's a great example of a
Yeah,
way to honor someone and not let them consume you.
yeah, and I
Who's
think
died. Yeah.
sometimes people can let sorrows consume them, and I think what sorrows are doing is saying, um, think of the care of the person who's died, your care for them, their care for you, and what they're still giving you, and hold on to those things. But Recognize there's a wider world that you've always been living in. Bring them with you,
Mm.
but live in that wider world. And it's going to be a different world. And there will be some friends who will disappoint you, or people you're counting on, understanding what you're going through, who will just not know what to do with you and walk away. And if you tell them what you need from them and they still walk away, it's probably a good thing they're walking away. You've got other people in your life to live with.
Yeah. Throughout our conversation so far, you've referenced the words soul and spirit a few times.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about spirituality
Mhm.
in grief, what you've discovered. I'm curious too, are you a spiritual guy?
We all are, but there are ways of expressing spirituality that people stereotype as the only way,
Very
which
true, yeah.
which is problematic. Um, I I wrote a book called How We Grieve, Relearning the World, and we've been sort of talking around that in a lot of ways. But I had a dear friend whose son had fallen off a roof and died. And he wrote wonderfully about just how it felt like his whole world was like a piece of glass that just broke. There was brokenness everywhere, and it was powerful stuff. He liked my book, but he talked to me and he said, in lots of ways you emphasize helplessness, and egos are helpless, and there's a lot in your book that's ego, and ego is about controlling, solving problems, managing every day,
Hmm.
and so on. And I thought about that for a while, and I said to myself, he's really right. And I did a good job there of introducing the idea of grieving as relearning how to live in the world with all these different dimensions to it. Uh, and I started reading books by, I think the guy's name, oh God, it's his first name is Thomas, so I identified, but I can't remember the last. 4 or 5 different books about the soul of this, the soul of that, and so on. I was reading them in the 90s. Um,
Was it
the Enchantment of Everyday Life. Um, Thomas More was it?
Thomas More? Yes,
Yeah,
Thomas More. I was gonna, the name was on the tip of my brain and
yeah.
I couldn't.
So
Wasn't he a former monk or,
yeah, yeah, of some sort.
yeah.
I think anyway, he was writing about soul and spirit, and I thought everything this guy's writing about makes absolutely good sense to me. There are these dimensions of living that I didn't really touch on in my book. But then he talked about soul as if it was the same thing as spirit, and I thought, no. So I started thinking really hard, and by the time I wrote my second book on the heart of grief, death, and search for lasting love, which I think is the central thing that you really struggled for, um, I decided that soul was one thing and spirit was another. Soul, you you root yourself, you ground yourself, you connect. Spirit, you overcome, you rise above, you better yourself, you um, so soul's going down and spirit is soaring. Soul is grounding itself and spirit is reaching out for the new and the special and the extraordinary. Adventure and so on is something the spirit does, and soul, you return to your favorite chair and hold the hand of the person who's sitting next to you and just love and feel loved. Uh, I finally decided that those were two different things, and soul is within us all. Um, we are all grounded in the world. What does that? Soul does that. We're loving, we're caring, we're generous, we're nurturing, we're uh, friendly, um, we make ourselves at home. Uh, so when I was talking about relearning how to live in the world, I talked about reshaping our daily lives. because they can't have the shape that they had before. Soul does a lot of that work of returning to what's still working there and still nourishes us and where we still feel grounded and at home. Um, and the spirit um, sort of navigates our life story. And we're constantly moving into the new and moving into the next chapters of our lives. And when someone has died, the next chapters are going to be inevitably different because major characters have now left the scene, and they can be
Mm.
present in our hearts and minds, but they can't be physically present. So we reshape our daily lives and we move into new chapters, and our spirits are the ones that are doing that. And they engage with change, and they engage with growth and overcoming of problems, adventuring into the new, exploring, curiosity. All those things are things of the spirit. Um, and when you think of spirituality, I think uh, in this last book, Seeking Wisdom in Death's Shadows, that we're talking about, or because I wrote it
Which,
anyway.
yeah, it's the book you're
Yeah,
just
and
releasing. Yeah.
and it's what was I was about into the new chapters of your life. And so, oh, I thought about spirituality, and people often connect that with religion. And I thought I better speak about this. And I think spirituality is a combination of the soul and spirit within you that do all of those things that I just talked about. But a core idea in spirituality is seeking meaning. And seeking meaning in two senses. One, understanding of who you are and the world and how it all works and how it got to be the way it is, origins, sources of being, and the like. And um, meaning as understanding is one aspect of meaning seeking, which our souls and spirits do, and the other is meaning in living.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what an awful lot of talk about grief and loss uh, sort of ignores is the deep challenges to understanding what we take to be the best reasons for being alive.
That's a great point. And I love that you covered meaning so much in your new book
Uh-huh.
because I think that's such a that without meaning,
Yeah.
we don't
But
have
people
much.
people write a lot about in the literature, and they've even written whole books about attachment. And attachment gives us security in living, so we don't feel like we're in danger of being blown away or drowning or starving, and so on. And we put a lot of effort into getting means to security. But you have that, and you don't have anything like if you had that and that only, pretty soon you'd be wondering, but why do I want to live? And the question, why do I want to live,
Mm.
is answered by completely different stuff. It's not the food that comes to your table. I want food so that while I'm living, I can realize what's most meaningful to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which is when you're not in survival mode, a luxury, right? To be able
yeah,
to,
and,
yeah.
when people talk about attachment relationships, they talk about your ties with your mother and father and with your children and with your spouse or life partner, and so on. And what makes those things meaningful for you is not that they give you security. It's what, when you're secure in them, you're able to do in giving and loving and receiving and
And who you're able to
accomplishing.
be as a result of that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's spirituality. And in this world, there are religions that
Mm-hmm.
have emerged through the ages. And for some people, they turn out to provide both understanding and reasons for living that work for them. And other people don't find the world's religions providing them much of either. And some people have had horrific experiences in religious contexts, which is not to say they haven't had horrific experiences out of religious context. Religion isn't the only source of unhappiness, but it is a source of unhappiness for a lot of people. And I think if we help people who are grieving draw upon religion, if it's something that works for them, that's a good thing. But we're not neglecting their spirituality if they have an understanding of how things are working that works for them, and if they have reasons for living that are really important for them, that aren't destructive of other people's lives.
Yeah.
um, and it's really tragic to see people who seem not to have a reason for living other than conquest or accumulation and so on. But we won't
You
talk
just
about
described our
contemporary
culture.
politics. Yeah, yeah. Well, I moved to Canada 25 years ago because my wife happened to be living here doing good things, and it was a time when I could retire from my academic life and still have a good life. Um, and Canada and the U.S., in my experience, are quite different. Uh, I don't
It
want to get
seems that
into,
way. Yeah.
yeah, I don't. I spend more time with friends. I spend less time worried about funds. uh,
Mm.
it, and
Yeah, no, they're very
friendships have
different.
been
Yeah.
easy to build, but we don't want to talk about cultural contrasts here.
No, no, that was just a side comment. You just sort of hit on one of the problems in American culture is that drive to be successful and accumulate a lot of wealth and material stuff and blah, blah, blah. But
It's hard to
when
love stuff. You
it
can be motivated to accumulate it, but it doesn't nurture you.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. And maybe for a moment it might bring you some joy or happiness. All right, so I'm curious, do you have a suspicion or an intuition about whether or not consciousness survives death?
I know that people believe it does.
There's my.
And I'm suspicious of
You're suspicious.
that. I remember I'd been teaching for about 10 years, and I gave a little talk, and I pulled out the cartoons I'd been accumulating for those 10 years and the quotations. They were all in a shoebox.
Hmm.
And I put together a talk, and I called it Fragile Humanity, Handle with Care.
Okay.
And I talked about four questions. I tried to repeat them before. Is impermanence okay? Is small and insignificant okay? Is not knowing okay? And is suffering okay? And I remember giving a talk in London and a couple of other places based on thinking about those questions. And people can say no to those, or they can say a kind of a reluctant yes to all of
Sure.
those,
Yeah.
or almost an open-hearted yes to all of those. And I argued that a good solid root for unhappiness is continuing to say no to any of the four. Because in doing so, you are saying no to who and what you are. You are a being that is small and insignificant in the scope of things,
Absolutely. Yeah.
will suffer and will not know lots of things you really would like to know. And your time will be short. You will be impermanent. And I ventured to say, and the counselors in the audience, and there were lots of them, people who try to say no to any of those things fill couches in counselors' audiences. That's what they wind up talking about. When you boil it down, this is an intolerable not knowing for you. This is an intolerable you don't last very long for you. This is an intolerable suffering is inevitable in your life, and you just have no tolerance for that, or you don't know what to do with it or how to live with it. And I ask myself now and again, does that entail that um, I should be okay with my life as a finite thing? I think in general, um, that's true. So then when you introduce the idea of a conscious survival of this thing that you've trained yourself to be accepting of its being small, so I think I would say something like, if it could be meaningful and loving, I would welcome it. But I think it's better to live so that you're surprised if it actually happens. And I think
Yeah, yeah.
that's the way I live.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious because I mean, you've spent so much time
Mhm.
answering these questions, looking at this, the
Yeah.
topic of death and loss.
I remember I had an exercise I gave students.
Yeah.
I asked them to describe a life that would go on forever after you live this finite life, that you would really want to live forever. And I remember there was a Doonesbury cartoon, and they're all in the bar and they're talking to one another and they're wondering about what comes after. And they really had very little to say about that. And in the Western imagination, hell has been imagined very richly, and heaven has been under imagined. So they talked a little bit at the bar about what they envisioned. They said, well, it'd be like a big party, and you're reunited with everyone you ever loved, and so on, and you're getting along, you're having a good time. And then somebody says, well, what about after the party? Um, and one of them ventures, well, I don't know, maybe we all go bowling.
Well, what you're describing is like what if there is an existence after your
This one.
physical life is
Hmm.
over, but that existence has nothing to do with being human and that there's no time there.
Yeah. And what would it be like to experience that?
Well, it's hard to imagine it from a human perspective. You'd have to have the direct experience of it to understand it, I think. But
Yeah,
if that
well,
were the case, then
and if there's a good one and it comes my way, I'll welcome it. And if
yeah,
there are ways of misbehaving so you don't get that chance, I'll try to avoid misbehaving.
I think it's hard to imagine if
Mhm.
if consciousness does survive physical life,
Yeah.
and then just imagining that our human minds can't imagine what it would be like because we're no longer human.
Yeah. Well, and imagine being non-physical. I mean,
Hmm.
that's a big stretch.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I
imagine
will
it though.
say
Yeah.
this, I won't name any names, but I know some people who are very dear to me who enjoy um, psychedelics,
Hmm.
and ayahuasca in particular,
Right,
a
right.
plant from Peru.
South America, yeah.
And I know them well. I trust them when they talk to me and explain what their experiences have been like. And they sometimes surprise me by telling me things about myself that it's hard for me to imagine how anybody came to know them, but it's accurate.
Hmm.
And so on. So uh, there's more in this world than this philosopher can imagine, and
It's mysterious. Yeah.
yeah, that's a Shakespeare line. Um, but it's as if these people, as they talk about their experiences, are having incredible visions and so on, which says to me eyeballs, and they're moving, which says to me body, uh, and so on. So I just, in my head, I say, I'm not wildly enthusiastic about following them into the same practices that they're in.
That's
But
fair.
if it actually turns out to have features like that, and that can happen to me after I check out, that will be a completely new thing. And if you want to call
Or
it a
not.
life, you could call it a life. But anyway,
Yeah. No,
that's
I was just curious. Yeah,
out of my ken. I just don't know.
yeah, that's territory I explore a lot. I'm interested
Yeah.
in that.
Well, I appreciate the interest completely.
Yeah, I was just curious about your
Yeah.
take on it. I gathered from how you've been presenting
Uh,
your philosophies
yeah.
that that is how you felt, but I just wanted to confirm because I didn't want to make an assumption.
Yeah. One of the things I just have little tolerance for, and I never get physical with anybody. And there were times when I could have been dangerously so. Um, but people who hammer one another for differences in understandings of things that are very difficult to grasp.
Yeah,
Appreciate, be humble, and highly tolerant of um, disagreements about fairly fundamental things. Um, don't be dangerous in your believing. Be, um, well, I'll tell you, you'll probably want to can this from your filming, but while we're talking, I want to tell you this story.
okay.
All right. My doctoral dissertation advisor happened to have an interesting man as his Sunday school teacher when he was growing up in Switzerland in the 1930s. His Sunday school teacher was Albert Schweitzer. All right. And he was in a Lutheran church, and they were studying church doctrine and around um, the sacrament of communion. There, in some quarters, there is a strong belief that there's a literal transformation of what is being consumed from wine and bread into blood and body. And my doctoral dissertation advisor said, came the Sunday when I was going to swear before everybody and take my first communion, that I believe that. And Schweitzer asked him, "Do you believe that, my son?" And he says, "Actually, no. I'm afraid I'm going to embarrass my parents, and I'm afraid I can't go before the church and swear that I believe that."
Because
Uh,
then I'll have to go to confession because I
yeah.
just lied.
Well, and it would have been, well, he believed that if he took it and he didn't really believe it, he'd go to hell.
Ah,
And Schweitzer said, you are not the only one who has come with this kind of concern. Um, Are you familiar with the Beatitudes in the Sermon on the Mount? Yes. Uh, do you believe those are important tenets of in leading a good life? I do. He said, "That's good enough, son."
okay.
That's the way I feel. Taking a particular belief about what happens in certain circumstances as a life or death matter is a mistake.
Yeah, you're hitting on terror management theory, I think. Yeah,
Gosh, yeah.
right? You're familiar
Yeah.
with that? Yeah. Yeah, just how threatened we are when there's opposition to belief, especially belief around death.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And when you have institutions that are reinforcing terror, um, to me, those are questionable institutions, but that's another discussion.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I didn't mean to get off track, but it just, yeah, it just popped into my head as you were talking.
So how did we do? Did we do all right? You want to
Wh-
talk some more? We can talk some more if you want.
Well,
Ask another,
I was just gonna
you can
actually,
splice the film, you know?
I was just gonna wrap it up. Just as a reminder,
Mhm.
you have a new book coming out called Seeking Wisdom in Death's Shadows, and
Yeah.
it's a collection of writings that you've done over the years. Yeah.
It's a collection from four of the very first back in the 80s, and then an evolution of that thinking And there are 14 pieces that have been published before and 9 that have never been published. So it's
Okay.
collected writings, but the last book I wrote before this one was a re-edition of the first thing in about 2012. So this is capturing at least the newness of the last 15 years or so. And it traces my thinking and my writings, but it is also kind of an intellectual autobiography. So you get to know me and where I started and where I wound up. Uh, and I hope to be around for a while longer, but the numbers available to me are growing smaller.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear that. I think that's happening to all of us, right?
Yeah. Well,
Some
I
more
was
than others, depending on.
I was 80 years old in July. The,
Well, good for you. That's awesome. Yeah.
the tickers, things are still working, and they tell me that my body's still working. So the doctors threatened me with another 15 years,
They
and
threatened you, huh?
yeah, and I'm
Oh, how
thinking,
dare they?
I'm thinking by then that most of the people I know won't be around.
Yeah. But you have all of these philosophies to help you manage them not being around.
Yeah, eventually I'm going to start throwing things, I think, but right now I'm.
That's fair and very human. Yeah.
Well, I think I've been blessed with a fair share of equanimity. I'm not going to go wild in any circumstances. If threatened, I would do things to protect myself or especially my loved ones. But uh, I'm pretty mellow in this life, and it's a good place to be. It really
Yeah.
is. And I can meet people, and we've been talking pretty well, don't you think?
I, I think so. Yeah. I hope so.
Good. It's
Yeah.
it's it's really been nice to meet you.
It's been lovely to meet you too. I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with me and sharing all of your philosophies with me.
Well, now there's another thing about philosophy. Everybody needs wisdom. And philosophers from the very beginning in ancient Greece identified themselves as seekers of wisdom.
Mm,
And there's a difference between being a seeker of something that we all need, that is, know-how in living a challenging life with challenges in them that don't go away but keep showing you something else, um, and claiming to have acquired heaps of wisdom. I suspect that I've come upon some wise ways of living in the world, but my ways may not be very suitable for lots of other folks who are meeting different challenges and different life circumstances and
that's
so
fair.
on. But
That's very fair.
I would say that if you have some of the skills that I have, that I think any person can acquire, um, you can talk wisdom with anybody. You can talk wisdom with little children, and they will have perspectives on their meetings with some of these things that don't go away in life, that will often surprise you.
Absolutely.
And you will sometimes sort of swallow hard and say, God, I wish I knew that when I was 6.
No kidding, right? Yeah.
So,
And
I mean,
sometimes a lot of that wisdom comes from loss too,
yeah, oh, absolutely.
because the loss gives you it gives you perspective on what's important in your
Yeah,
life.
yeah. And sometimes it will surprise you. What I miss most about so and so, I never quite appreciated so much when she was alive, but
Yeah,
now, and she had a way of just sort of being in a room that made it different. And I wish she could be in the room with me now. Is quite a plausible kind of realization, not appreciating fully what you have when you have it, and
yeah, it's a
appreciating it more later.
great point.
Yeah,
Wouldn't we be well served if we could take stock of all the gifts that all the people in our lives are offering us all the time
I used to
before they die?
quote a little song lyric. I can't remember the singer. Remember old friends, the gifts they've given stay with you every day, whether
Love
they're
it.
dead,
Yeah.
dead or alive.
Yeah.
That's one of the parts or the main reasons for having friends, I think.
Yeah. A friendship's a pretty amazing thing.
Well, and then you can give in return. And I, alternate Mondays, I meet with a colleague who's 6 or 7 years older than I am,
All right.
worked in this death and dying field for a long time, and we talk for an hour on the phone like this. Um, Sometimes it's trivial, and sometimes, well, like this last one, he said he's got about 25 different things in his physical condition that people are concerned about, and he's losing uh, many of his abilities and so on. But just having a chance to face with somebody on a regular basis um, is wonderful.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Uh, and
Well,
we're not even snacking while we're doing it.
if people wanted to learn more about your work, the books you've done,
Oh,
you have a website, correct?
I do. It's called Grief's Heart with no punctuation .com.
Okay, awesome. I'll put that in the show notes so people can look at it and then they can get your books on there, yeah?
It will tell you how to get them.
Okay, yeah, it'll
Yeah,
point them in the direction
oh
of
yeah,
getting your books.
and the people who got me into my publicist got me into doing this stuff. Um, Told me to get my son to revise my uh,
Update your website?
website I hadn't touched for 10 years. And so we've got stuff on the new books and we've arranged stuff on older things. You need to know about this because you're not going to go to my website and look at all this kind of stuff. But you counsel with people, right?
That's part of what I do, yeah.
And you see that?
Catching your breath in grief,
Yeah,
and grace will lead you home.
yes. The book is small meditations accompanied by nature photographs.
Beautiful. They're
And
gorgeous photographs too. All right.
thank you.
On that
Thanks
note,
for inviting me.
Tom, thank you very much for coming on and chatting with me. I don't know about you, but I enjoyed that conversation. If you'd like to learn more about Tom or to get a copy of his latest book, Seeking Wisdom in Death's Shadows, his collected writings on how we grieve, you'll find a link to his website in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and a big thank you to Lonnie for her generous donation to the podcast. If you're enjoying the show and would like to offer your support, you can make a donation of any amount by clicking on the Support This Podcast link in the show notes. You can also help by leaving a positive review, or letting your friends know about the show. It's all super helpful and super appreciated. In the next episode, we're going to explore the art of manifestation. Until next time.